We're right in there. Good evening, Ka-Pow fans. Sorry, I've just realised the sun is coming right in behind me. I'm not sure how good this is going to look. Didn't realise literally until the countdown was hitting 2 seconds. Welcome back to Comics in 5 Minutes. I'm your ever-loving host, Shorty. And I'm sneaking an extra one today because a lot of stuff came out this week. Some of it's supposed to be out last week. UK shipping issues. And the one I'm reviewing is probably the bigger release of the week. And it's also one that we've totally sold out of already. So Moonknight is getting a go. And his mission is justice. We'll leave that there because that's going to come back to us later on. But we're going to talk about the cover actually while we're here, artwork-wise, because that is absolutely brilliant. You can never believe. Absolutely glorious amount of detail there, showing the weather and the wind and the slightly 90s ripped costume, which everyone seemed to have. And I remember looking at that thing thinking, that's going to be brilliant. But the internal artwork isn't the same. Obviously, quite often you will get just a cover artist come in and do a one-shot job to make something pop off the shelf, and that's fine. Internally, it looks very, very different stylistically, though. But it didn't take me long to realise I was going to have a lot of fun with this artwork. So I should get the artist's name while I've got this open. Alessandro Cappuccio actually does really, really well with kind of like a simplistic line when it's necessary. And not to say simplistic is a bad thing at all. Then when you actually get to see Moonknight, that's when she goes to town. And you get all the detail, because with the basically white costume with some black affectations on there as well, you think there wouldn't be much you can do with it, but there is just so many shots throughout this comic book which really highlight how good the character design is, how well that costume has been done, and brilliantly done with inking as well. Really, really love the artwork. The more the book went on, the more I realized that this is exactly what I wanted out of the artwork. The writing, Jed MacKay, not a name which really pops for me. It's not somebody where I'm like, oh my gosh, Jed MacKay's new comic book. Cannot wait to check it out. I'm aware of the name. I've seen it around. This is the first thing because I've really read and been like paying attention to him. And he's an absolutely solid writer. It's not to say I'm going to be waxing lyrical in the way I do people like Ram V, but Ram V is kind of a special case. Like I've said before, there's times I've been reading his stuff and I will occasionally just stop to read it out loud because it deserves to be done as such. This is actually just a really good character study through the story as well. It involves an awful lot of exposition and backstory done as, I want to say Mark Spector, but who knows at this point. I was going to call him Moonknight, Mr. Knight. He's basically seeing a therapist. And it's quite entertaining because he's literally saying, oh, yes, I died and came back and I've done it repeatedly. And the therapist is like, well, usually that would be a weird thing for a customer to say, a client to say. But since the Avengers asked me to take a look at your case, I think it's cool. Because he has a very convoluted backstory to the point that sometimes it puts me off reading Moonknight simply because there is just a lot of glare there. Because there's so much going on with it that it almost feels like it's deliberately trying to keep like new readers at bay. Some people can just do a nice 6-issue run, which is lots of action and adventure and Moonknight kicking ass, and that's cool. Other people delve into the dissociative identity disorder really heavily. And I always worry when you stuff like that, because that's an actual like real life kind of situation that some people deal with, and taking it as just a characterization for a superhero, I suppose, could be problematic. Thankfully, you don't really have anything like that in here. It does concentrate on him being him. And it's basically him being the defender of travelers. And there's there's a huge glare. I might not be able to keep doing this because I'm staring at how bad that is. In fact, let's do that, shall we? What was I saying? Yes, so he basically is mainly talking about, sorry, this is not going very well. There we go. Mainly talking about just the problems he has of being who he is as Moonknight rather than who he is as the various iterations of the human side of himself. And he gets into an awful lot of cool fights. There's vampires, there's ratkin called Vermin, I think. And he meets somebody who actually seems to know who he is, like the Fist of Khonshu, which ties into a lot of stuff that's going to happen in the Avengers. So yeah, although there is, some backstory to be done here, it's not like huge amounts to do with like years and years of stuff. Most of it goes down to the last Avengers arc. But the big thing I want to talk about today, and why I highlighted that little thing there, is quite often you get a sense that Moon Knight is seen as just a Marvel version of Batman, which is absolutely fine. It doesn't really bother me that happens. There's a few like kind of overt issues where they do it in this one. I think one of my favorites is where, like this one I showed you earlier, where he uses his fists into the cape to kind of do that, kind of pull it around kind of thing. It was very, very cool, very, very Batman. And it works brilliantly. But then at the end, there's an introduction to a character who's kind of always seen in noir-drenched shadows, who literally is smiling and talking about how he's going to do terrible things and it's going to make this person instead of huge and over the top. And I can't help but feel that Jed MacKay, if it hasn't already been done, and maybe this is a character I'm not really aware of, has introduced the Moonknight's Joker. Brilliant. To say how long people have been comparing the two, I think it's probably overdue, and I kind of like how he's done it. It makes an awful lot of sense in story, and I can't wait to see how it plays out. Genuinely cool idea. Sorry about this. My laptop is just balanced precariously at the moment. Hopefully tomorrow we won't have the really bright sunshine from behind, and I can do this an awful lot easier. Until then, stay safe, everyone. Look after each other. Bye. Are we going to end? There we go.